go?
Bye.
All right. Okay, so we have Terry Shames with us today. Terry writes the popular award-winning Samuel Craddock series set in the fictional small town of Jarrett Creek, Texas. The latest book in that series, Guilt Strikes at Granger's Store, was named one of Library Journal's top mysteries of 2023. And her latest book, Perilous Waters, is the first in her new Jesse Madison thriller series. It came out last month, April 2nd, 2024. Kirkus calls it a page-turning thriller with hints of romance and future adventures. So we're very excited about that. Thank you so much, Terry, for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to see. I see some old faces, including my sister and Kathy and who else was there? There are several people that I know. It's really wonderful to see everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit. I was here a good while back, pre-COVID, and one of the things I want to talk about is how things have changed since COVID. For some reason, it really changed a lot of things, including the fact that it used to be that people would show up in person, and now everything seems to be hybrid. In LA, I have moved to Los Angeles since I last talked to you. So I'm finding out new things about Los Angeles. We have very much of a hybrid thing, and I just think it's very interesting. And a lot has changed in the publishing industry too, and in the bookstore industry. So I'm going to just mention those things straight up. The other thing I want to say is you're talking about the Texas Book Festival. We just had the LA Times Festival of Books, and I was the person who agreed to set up the booth and take it down. It's really not as much as work as you think because they actually set stuff up for you a lot of times. But I want to urge people to go. I sold 30 books at the LA Times Festival of Books, which is a lot of books to sell in one sitting. I sold out the first day. I had to bring a whole bunch the second day and sold out that day too. So I just urge you to go and sell your books because it's a wonderful way to introduce people to your work. So let's talk about a little bit, and then I'll leave plenty of times for questions. And if anybody has a question in the middle, it's really fine with me if you interrupt. I don't mind answering a question to clarify. So first of all, let me just talk about the fact that I had just had the 10th book in my Samuel Craddock series published, and that really came out. It came out in October and was well received. But here's the thing. I changed publishers, and my new publisher, my old publisher was sold. And I did not like the person who bought, I mean, when I say I didn't like him, I didn't like the business practices of the guy who bought my old publisher. So I went with a new publisher, and that is Severn House. They are a wonderful English publisher. They pick up broken series. Like if your publisher has gone out of business or if they drop you or something, they will often pick up things. So they have lots of really well-known authors who have their series with them. The thing about them, and this is and this sort of talks about how the bookstore industry has changed. The publisher does not give returns on hardcover books. In other words, if the bookstore orders books, they won't take them back unless it's for an event. And bookstores across the board have said, we don't want to deal with these people. Unhappily, a lot of mid-list and small publishers are now doing this. So you may find this is a problem, and you have to bring your books and sell them, and consign them, which in my case often means I lose money on the books. Now it's kind of a loss leader. I don't know if you know what that is, but that is you spend a little money to introduce people to your products. So I'm willing to do that. But more and more, I'm finding that bookstores really are not very excited about hosting mid-list authors. They want either big names or non-mysteries. And I have found this across the board. I have two really well-published friends who tried to get into Book People, and Book People just said no, that they weren't gonna have them. One of them lives in Austin, and they're just not welcoming as they used to be. It used to be, I would say to a bookstore, I'm coming into town this time, and they say, yay, we want you, and now, and it is, at first I thought, well, it's just me, my publisher, whatever. It isn't me. I've gone to conferences and I've been hearing this more and more from people. Now I had an event yesterday at a bookstore in South Los Angeles. And this bookseller is really, really supportive of independently published books. She keeps a whole shelf of independently published books. She is really, really generous, but not all bookstores are that way. And it's been explained to me. I have a couple of bookstores here in Los Angeles that are very, very kind, and they're happy to have me, and they do what needs to be done to make that happen. But they've explained that they're really on a tight budget, and to pay someone to keep the store open during an event and to set it up and all of that is sometimes past their budget. So just to let you know that bookstores are struggling. And that's all I'm going to say about that part. But I want to get to the part about that's really the more fun part, which is about my new series. I decided that I love my Samuel Craddock series, and I have another one coming out in the fall, and I'm going to get another contract. They just told me that they want another one after this. So I really love writing those, but I sort of felt like I wanted to branch out. And these are police procedurals, which means I'm sure you know the difference, but I'm just going to break it down to what I think is the difference between police procedurals and thrillers. The new series is a thriller series. Police procedurals deal with the past, what happened in the past, and we need to find out what happened and what's who did it, why they did it, what happened, all of the details in the past. A thriller is about the future, what's going to happen that needs to be prevented, or is present, what's happening right now that's frightening and that's exciting, and that someone has to either stop or has to find whoever's doing it and figure out what has to be done to make things work. So somebody talked about it as if there's a bomb under a table and everyone knows it's there, they don't know who put it there. And so the hero or heroine has to keep the bomb, has to discover the bomb and keep it from going off. So that's sort of what a thriller is about. So I decided I wanted to write a thriller series, and I've been to the Bahamas a lot. And I thought, well, I'll just write this fun book that is about a woman who gets in deep trouble in the Bahamas. And as it happened, I was in the Bahamas and had an adventure where I ended up on a boat of a drug dealer.
Oh my God. It's an adventure.
I mean, it's a long story, but we ended up we went on what was supposed to be just this leisurely little trip down a river in the middle of a little island off of our boat was, we had a big boat that was anchored in a lagoon there. And all of this is in the book, the anchorage, the boat, all of that. This part is not. We went down the river and it started getting dark, and we said, well, we need to get to the other side, and then we'll just come around the other side of the island and go back to the boat. We were in a little dinghy. Well, we got there and the water on the other side was extremely heavy and turbulent. So we decided we couldn't go one way because there were too many rocks. So we went the other way, and we said, well, there's a pass through. We missed the pass. Sorry, that's my dog. We missed the pass through and ended up going miles and miles and miles. And it was dark and it was oh
my God.
Crazy. It was crazy. It was crazy. So, and meanwhile, we had someone on the boat who didn't know where we were because our walkie-talkies went bad. So we were,
Oh my gosh.
so anyway, I said, I am not going any farther. I don't know what's going to happen, but they have to move the boat. Well, it turns out that the captain said, no, we're not moving the boat because it's too dangerous in Bahamian waters to move a boat at night. So that's the long story. I stayed on this boat with these guys who turned out to be drug dealers. They were really nice. They were on their way to Honduras to pick up a load. So anyway, my husband and my friend went back to the boat. The captain came back with them, brought me back, all of that stuff. It was really, but it seemed like this was really going to be a wonderful way to start this book. Meanwhile, I had read some stuff about pirates there in the Bahamas, terrible stories. And I thought, well, who could do this? So I started thinking about it. Well, eventually, it took me a long time to write this book because I have my other series and I'd never written a thriller, so I had to figure out. I mean, I'd get the main hero, Jesse Madison, into big scrapes, and then I have to think, well, how do I get her out of this? I have no idea. I am such a wuss. I'm afraid of everything. So I just thought I have to put her in situations that would scare me to death. So the other part of it is that I made her a diver because one time we decided we were going to we were going to dive in the Great Barrier Reef. So I got certified, went to the Great Barrier Reef, went down, scared me to death. I said, I'm never doing this again. And I thought, why not make her a diver? Because I know how to scare people. I know what scares me. And so I know how to make myself afraid if I'm writing this. And then I have to figure out how to get out of it. It was really fun. It took a long time because I kept getting her into these big scrapes and saying, now what? And I'd have to do research and I'd have to work with it and have to think about it. Well, it came out April 2nd, and here it is, right here, Perilous Waters. And it's the same publisher as on the other ones. And I absolutely love the cover. It's so much fun. And it has been selling really well. It got some good reviews. So I'm very pleased with it. And now they want a second one. Well, I thought it was a standalone. So then I had to figure out, so how am I going to move forward? Because in the end of this book, I'm not going to reveal anything, but there's an open question. And I thought, how do I answer that question? So that got me started. So I'm about 10,000 words into the next one, and I have so many things I have to research. When I write my Samuel Craddock series, I don't have to do research because I know this town, I know the people, I know Texas, I know everything I need to know about it. I'm setting the next book in islands north of Sicily. I've been there, but I don't know anything about, I don't know the details. So, I mean, the other day I was looking up what's the weather like this time of year that I was setting the book, who would pick her up from the airport? What, I have to, all of these little things that I really have to know about. And I'm actually going to have her become part of the FBI dive team.
Oh, cool.
How many people knew that existed? I didn't. I was just reading, trying to figure out what she would be doing. And all of a sudden I ran across this, that there is an FBI dive team, and the FBI dive team is called on by countries all over the world to come and help with dive accidents, with airplane crashes, with anything that happens in the water, because most countries don't have the kind of resources that the FBI has. So I thought, oh, that's going to be wonderful. And that way I get to go places and take it off my taxes. So
There you go.
Sounds like a good plan, right?
really. So people have asked me whether or not it's hard to do multiple projects. It really isn't. They're so different. I think I actually have another project that I'm working on that is a private eye, female private eye. And I don't, for some reason, I don't have any trouble keeping them all apart. One doesn't bleed into the other. I'm thinking about doing a spinoff for the Samuel Craddock series because I love and this is something that you may find interesting. I love the deputy sheriff, Maria Trevino. And I was thinking about doing from her point of view, but I thought, I'm not Hispanic. I do not know Chicana women well enough I don't know about that culture enough. And I have to decide whether I don't want to be accused of appropriation. She has been living in this small town for a long time, but I have to really decide whether or not I feel like I have the chops to do that. You know, I know people do it. But you know, it's a decision I have to make. I think it would be such fun, but I don't know. So anyway, there's that. Regarding the multiple projects, I have always had a traditional publisher. And the private eye novel that I'm working on was one that I wrote a long time ago, and I just decided that I wanted to start playing with the idea of becoming a hybrid publisher, and that I mean a hybrid author, and that means some of my books would be with a traditional publisher and some would be independently published. I have been talking to a lot of authors recently, and I am absolutely shocked at the number that I know personally who are really well published, who have decided to do both. I don't know if you know who Gigi Pandian is. She has both traditional publishers and independently published books. I'm not thinking right off the top of my head. Matt Coyle is thinking about doing some independently published books. Anyway, Becky Clark, I don't know if you know her. She has a very long-running series with Kensington, and she's very happy with them. But she said, "I don't make any money," and that is the deep, dark secret about publishing: is people do not make a lot of money as a traditionally published author. The publisher makes the money, and even that, they are on a slim margin because their costs are so much. And when you read published books these days and you say, where was the editor? It's because a lot of them have fired their editors. Then, you know, they'll have like a copy editor. That's it. Now, I'm lucky I have an editor who reads my stuff, and then she sends it off to the copy editor, and then she sends it off to the proofreader. And I'm going through it now, and I've found about 15 or 20 things that they didn't catch. You know, you have to be the one who's the last eyes who look at it before it actually gets published. And so I've been doing that. I may have told you this before, but I read a book backwards on the very last pass, and that is I read the last page, and then I read the page before that, and I read it aloud, and the page before that, because you can catch so many errors. Now, I have another friend who says that he actually has it's some kind of an audio reader that will read his book for him, and he said you catch a lot of things that way. That you won't see on the page, but you'll hear it. So I haven't tried using that because I really like doing it for myself. I like being able, because, for example, I ran into 2 sentences that had exactly the same phrase 3 times. And I said, well, no, we're not going to do that. So, I think it might have been. I said, no, a couple of those have got to be changed. But in the copy editing process, you can't do a lot of changing. You have to put just a couple of little words. You can't mess with the way the page is laid out. So you have to be very careful. And now I'm kicking myself for not being a little more careful when I went through it the last time myself. But how many times can you go through it before you just get sick of it?
Yeah.
You do. Yeah. And by the way, I was so impressed by hearing all the things that everyone has been doing. It sounds like this is a very successful group. It's nice to hear the short stories being published, the novels being published, and the people who are publishing themselves. And I'm sure that is a success. At any rate, I was talking about the hybrid author. A couple of my friends said, we need to have lunch. I need to talk to you about this. And one of them said, my publisher dropped me after 4 books, and I just didn't feel like I was just exhausted with the idea of having to get another publisher. So I decided to start publishing myself. And she said, it turns out I'm really good at business. And she said she's making $10,000 a month on her books. Well, she has published a lot of books now, and she had a fan base, which makes a difference. If you don't have a fan base, it's much harder to get started. I don't know enough about it to go into all the details, but I do know that advertising is really, really important if you publish yourself. You can't just throw it out there unless you're just doing it as a vanity project, which people do, and that's fine. You know, that's your choice is why you're publishing. I've actually had people who write and say, you know, I have a book, but I really don't care whether it gets published. I just enjoyed writing it. And I think, well, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I urge you, if you are going to publish yourself, that you really need to put aside some money for actually advertising the book, because otherwise nobody's going to hear it. Now, some people have said, and I've heard this many times, I don't like promoting my own work. It's really hard. But the best thing I ever heard about that was, if you have written a book that you're proud of and want people to read it, they have to hear about it in order to read it. So you have to promote it. That's the only way they're going to hear about it, unless you have a really good friend who promotes for you. So that can happen too. I'm going to talk just a little bit about my writing process, because it has changed as I've gotten older. I used to get up immediately and start writing, and I also would write late at night. I would start writing at 10 and I'd write until midnight with a glass of brandy next to me and just write. Well, I don't have the ability to do that anymore. And I find that I actually don't have the ability to jump right in the first thing in the morning. I mean, I know some writers who start at 5:30 and they keep going until they're done. I just find that I have to ease into the day. And so that's changed for me. And I think that you can't hold yourself to being exactly the way you always wanted to be, that you always felt like you had to do it this way. You have to experiment. And I mentioned Gigi Pandian earlier. She's very, very highly published and has won a lot of awards. And she said, if you are finding that you are struggling with the way you are writing and with your process, change something, like move your desk to the other side of the room, or put a plant in a different spot, or do something to just change things a little bit. And I find that that really helps me if I'm feeling a little bit stuck, which for some reason, I found that I was not writing at all the first few months of the year. And I'm not sure why that was. I didn't feel like I was blocked. I just didn't even sit down to write. It was like, no, don't do it. Well, that's not true. I had a short story I had to write, so I wrote that. And I worked on this thing that I'm thinking about publishing myself. People are always saying to me, God, you're so prolific. And I think it's because I try to write every single day, and it was unusual for me to not write for a few months. And I realized when I said not writing that I actually was writing. I just wasn't pushing myself the way I normally do. I normally set myself the goal of writing 2,000 words a day. So finally I said, you know, you're not doing very well. How about 500 words a day? And that was easier. You know, I could do that, and I felt more relaxed about it. I don't know how many of you have a writers group, but I have 2 writers groups, and they are so valuable to me. One in particular, I've been with for 30 years, and it
Wow.
used to be that was just 3 men and me. And then we decided and then there was another woman who came in, and she eventually retired. Um, and now we have 2 other women who are doing it. And we mostly meet on Zoom because people are all over the country. Both of my writers groups meet on Zoom now, which I think is interesting. It used to be, some people say they don't like Zoom meetings because they feel like they don't get the personal thing. But my experience is, if you meet the same people again and again and again on Zoom, you start to feel a sense of connection with them, regardless of the fact that you're not in the same room. And I see these people at conferences, and we're all so excited to see each other. But I think that having a writers group is really, really valuable. One of them only wants to see a few, like 10 pages at a time, and I don't write that way. But sometimes I'll just throw out 10 pages and say, fine, what do you think about this? But some people actually use it 10 or 20 pages at a time, and every week they'll be reading pieces of their work. When you are in a writers group, you can find how different people do different things, how there is this wide variety of ways that people write. I know, but I just read, who was it that I read? Some really famous author. I think it was Baldacci, who said that he has to perfect what he has done every day. He cannot stop until he feels like whatever he's written that day is exactly what he wanted to say. And the next day he starts with the next. And by the time he's done, he said the book is done. I do it the opposite. I smash through 2,000 words a day. I don't care what it says, just get it out on the page. Don't mess with, I actually don't write descriptions much when I'm writing. It's mostly action. This happened and now this is going on and that's going on and this person walks in and blah, blah, blah. And then I go back through. On my first pass, I always say, okay, are they all standing in the air? No. Where are they? What are they doing? What is this? What does it smell like? What does it look like? How does it feel? How do the people, I usually know how people feel because I'm really, dialogue is my thing. People are talking to each other and you get a sense of what's happening because of that. But all the other stuff, like even in my last pass through, I'll sometimes say, I I know personally what I'm trying to convey here, but it's not on the page. And I remember one book in particular that I wrote where I just didn't feel good about this. And all of a sudden I said, idiot, they have a child here. They have a child in the house. There would be stuff all over the floor. There would be there would be toys, even if it's neat, there would be a place with toys. And as soon as I started writing that, it blossomed. It came to life for me. And another one, they're driving along and I knew it was midwinter. It was cold. It was bleak as only Texas can be in February. And it wasn't on the page. So I started talking about how the houses looked as gray as the atmosphere and the dead branches and this. And pretty soon it felt like it was much more immediate. So that's the way I work. And each person is different. I remember hearing that Ernest Hemingway would finish and then no, it's not Ernest Hemingway, I'm sorry. Oh, it was Michael Connelly who says that he goes back for about 5 pages or so and he starts reading what he did the day before and then he hops in that way. Sometimes I'll do that, but not often. Usually I end on something that is precipitous. In other words, I'll say, and it's sort of an and then moment because the next day when I say, oh yeah, I know what was happening, and I start from there and just keep going. And I try to end it on something that I know will be exciting for me to work on the next day. That'll be good. So I'm trying to figure out what else you might like to know. The new series is exciting. Another thing I have to tell you, I've always gotten really good reviews. I'm very happy with my reviews. Always the professional reviews, Publishers Weekly and Kirkus and Book List there are a couple of others. Anyway, I've really always been happy. And suddenly, 2 books ago, I didn't get a Publishers Weekly review. And I wrote to my editor and I said, did they not get the book? Why did they not review it? And she said they have fired many of their reviewers and they are rarely reviewing mysteries anymore.
Oh.
And many people have told me that it's they tend to like to review a first mystery. The other person, the Toronto Star is very, very well known for doing mystery reviews. And I got several reviews from them and then nothing. And the same thing has happened. So just be aware that if you're looking for reviews, you need to start cultivating. There are a whole bunch of smaller reviewers like Kevin Tipple, who lives in just north of Dallas. He's a very well-respected reviewer. There is Christopher Zorsky, he reviews. Joanne Love, there's some private reviewers who review a lot and they are well respected. So you need to start hearing about that. Now this is a Sisters in Crime thing, and I think Sisters in Crime is very helpful at helping people figure out where they can get reviewed or how the industry works. These days, publishing is in trouble. I have to say, the last couple of conferences I've been to, people are feeling that there is a lot of chaos in the industry, that it isn't working well for authors at all. People are getting fewer advances. They're getting fewer print runs. And I have a friend who just put out a book that I think is utterly brilliant, and she went with a small press, and they will not tell her how many books they published, but they're all gone. They sold immediately because it's a wonderful book, but it's going to take her 3 or 4 weeks before they will get another print run out. That's unusual. It used to be much easier than that, and I'm not sure what the problem is. And I think that the future is more ebooks being published. One of the other things that changed when I changed publishers is I was always published in paperback, in trade paperback, which sells better. Now my books are published in hardcover, and I thought nobody is going to pay $30 for a hardcover book. Well, yeah, they do actually. So for a hardcover mystery book. And it was a surprise, but they do. People, if they like your work, they will pay for it. But the other thing is that I was surprised that they don't put out the paperback for 6 to 8 months after the hardcover comes out, which I just think is bizarre. I thought they should do it all at the same time. The other thing they've done is they do not, their ebooks are very expensive for the first. And then if the book isn't selling well, they drop that back a little bit. So every publisher is different, and publishers are really, I have a book that has been out on submission for a year. I have a good track record. I'm well known. I have good fans. I sell well. I cannot sell this book. My agent cannot sell this book. And I'm not sure what that's all about. But the things I get are just vague sorts of things like, we don't know. It's this or that. I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to publish it myself. I'm well known. I'll have a fan base and people will buy it. But the reason I haven't published myself is there's a learning curve to that. If you do it well, you can get a book and just throw it out there and hope for the best. But in order to get a good product out there, you have to have it looked at by your writers group or a good editor who will help you shape the book well. For me, I have absolutely no idea about covers. Book covers to me are just they're just, I've got all these books here next to me. The covers are all over the place. And I don't know anything about it. So I would hire someone to do the cover. I would hire someone to do all of the actual publishing. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't try to do it myself. It's too hard. Now I know a few of you have done this yourself, and I wouldn't mind hearing from you about your experience, whether you feel like you have been successful at it, how it's working for you. That sort of thing. So I just want you to know that the publishing industry is in turmoil right now. And if you find that you can't find an agent, a woman who I have great admiration for just died a couple of weeks ago, Camille Menachino. I don't know if any of you know her, but she had 3 series going all the time. She was a prolific writer, fascinating person. And someone asked her one time, gee, I just sent my book out to agents. So, what should I do? She said, until you have received 80 rejections, you're not even started. So, I mean, it's true. And when I got my first book published, I had 75 rejections before I finally found, and I was listening to Nan talk. This happened to me. The book was out on submission with 2 or 3 people. It had been out it took me 2 years to find an agent. It had been out for a long time. It had been out with different ones. People asked for this whole, but nobody got back to me. And then one agent said, I will take this book, but you have to change it from present tense to past tense. I said, okay, this is all I need. And that is, I knew I wasn't going to do that, but I wrote to the other ones who had the full out and I said, I have an interested agent. Bam! Just like Nan said, they were like sharks in the water. They wanted to read it right now. And I had 2 offers and I took one. Oddly enough, the other one, who was a well-known agent, wrote back to me very snippily and said, well, you wasted my time. Well, no, I didn't waste your time. You jumped faster, baby. So at any rate, I had an agent that I loved her personally, and we still have a wonderful relationship, but eventually I felt like she was not doing enough for me. She had 3 small children, and I thought she didn't like to do emails. Well, who doesn't? What? She wanted to talk on the phone. I had no interest in talking to her on the phone. I wanted to do things through. So finally, I called it quits with her, but she still, of course, has rights to my first 4 books as an agent. And she's a really wonderful person. So I have no trouble with her. The second person I got second agent was an agent who had several times written me emails saying, gee, I just read your latest book. I really loved it. And I thought, okay, maybe she'll take me on. And she did. And her name was Janet Reed. She was very, very well known as an agent. And she just died. Janet just, she did not handle COVID well. COVID was really hard for her. And eventually I felt like she wasn't contributing the way I wanted her to my career. So finally I said, I think maybe we're done. We've run out of gas. And she was fine with that. And we still maintained a very cordial relationship because she's was a wonderful woman. And in fact, about 2 weeks before she died, I sent her an email and I said, I just have to tell you, every time I come to the end of a book, your voice is in my head. You're not done yet. Because she always wanted one more twist and she was always right. So she didn't write back, and usually she'd get right back and say, oh yeah, how you doing? We just have an exchange, and she didn't get back to me. Well, I found out that she was very ill and had died right after that. So here was my decision about agents at that point. I felt like I could either go with someone who really, really was a go-getter, who was a really young, hungry agent, or I could go with the tried and true. I knew an agent, Kimberly Cameron, who I felt like was a solid agent. She might not be a ball of fire for everybody, but she was going to be a solid agent. I'm not a spring chicken. I talked to another agent who was a real go-getter with another agency. And what she said to me is, oh no, Samuel Craddock's done. We're not going there. We're going to do some other stuff. I said, not really. So I talked to Kimberly and she said, yeah, let's do it. So she's been my agent since then. And my big problem is wondering whether or not I finally approached her and said, what about if I publish some things myself? And she said, you always can do that, and we can do your other books. She said, but before you publish something yourself, I want to see it. She's greedy that way, which is, it's a nice problem to have. So at any rate, that's where I am. Do I have advice for writers? Do I have advice for writers? My advice is you have to write the book. I went to it was a writer's retreat with some people who were not published. And there was one woman who had a book I thought was fascinating. and all the other people that were her friends were there, and they were wanting to have her parse little pieces of it. I said, you know what? Don't do that. I said, write the book. Just write the damn book, and then you can start messing with it, and you can get you get published after that, because this is a good book. So she told me later that she went home and she put a note on her thing that said, just write the damn book. So she did. She's still working on it. This was not long ago, but she's had a few short stories published since then. And she's very active in Sisters in Crime. And I just think it's very helpful. So I think Sisters in Crime is extremely helpful as an organization, as is Mystery Writers of America. They have all kinds of workshops. If you can afford to go to a conference, it's a really wonderful way to get to know some authors, because when you do have a book published, you're going to want some blurbs, and never be afraid to ask, because the worst somebody can say is, I don't have time right now, or I don't blurb books, or something like. It's not personal, trust me. In the world of mainstream writing, it may be harder, but in the mystery world, everyone is very generous about their time, about helping you, about giving you good blurbs. I just found out that one of my blurbs was on the front cover of someone's book. I'm so excited. My name is right there. So I wrote to him and I said, they put it on the front cover. He said, I was so tickled. So yeah, so always ask if someone would blurb, and ask people, even if you have a favorite author and you wonder something about the way they do things, or if you need help, write to them. They're not going to come and throw garbage in your window. They'll help if they can. I remember one time, who knows who, of course, his name just went right out. Last name is Merrill. Anyway, he was the guy who wrote the Rambo series. David Merrill. Thank you. One time I asked a question at a conference, and after the panel was over, he ran out of the room and found me, and he said, I want to talk to you some more about what you asked. Now, he is a really famous author, and he had absolutely no reason that he was going to talk to me, except that I'd ask him a question. This happens again and again in the mystery field, is that people are very supportive of each other. So just if you have questions, ask, write fan letters, write reviews. People will remember your name if you write them fan letters. So I want to know what people might specifically want to know about things. Let's open it up for questions, shall we?
I had a question just pop in my head when you were just ending your
Who is this?
Clarissa.
Oh, hi, Clarissa. Thank you.
And my question is, if someone asks you to review their book and you are not that thrilled with their book, do you find something positive to say?
Well, are you talking about blurb the book or review the book? So if you're,
Either one or both.
okay, the review, yes, you can find things that are positive to say, or you can just not review it, because that's not something that people know about. A blurb is different, and I got some advice once from Tim Hallinan, who writes fabulous books. If you've never read The Queen of Patpong, run right out, buy it, and read it. It was one of the nominees for the Edgar one year, and it's a wonderful book. He's a great writer, and I asked him that very question. He said, do not put your name on a book that you don't really care for. I said, well, how do you tell someone? He said, you say, you want someone who has more enthusiasm than I do for this book. And I actually had to do that once for someone I really, really like a lot, and I just could not get behind this book. And I said, I just don't feel the enthusiasm that I need to be able to give you a good blurb. And she was just fine with that. And we've been, met each other since then. And however I worded it, it didn't hurt her feelings. So yeah, that's it. You can't, yeah. And then, of course, there was Craig Johnson, who I asked if he would blurb my book. And he wrote me back. He said, I would be happy to. It'll take 2 years. I have about 10 books piled up here that I'm supposed to blurb. So I laughed. I said, no, that's okay. Don't worry about it. So yeah. And you have to believe people when they say that, because I have a couple of times said to people, look, this is actually what I've learned to do. And that is, if someone asks me to blurb their book, which happens often, I will say, I'm not sure I have the time. Send it to me. And if I can't do it, I'll let you know. And I'll usually read a little bit of it. And if it's really a good book, then I'll go right ahead and do it. But if it isn't my book, I had someone once send me this, I don't even know how to describe it. It was about thugs. It was not anywhere in my bailiwick. It's not something I read. It's not something I write. Why he sent it to me, I don't know. But instead of saying, no, I read some of it and I thought, it's well written. It just isn't my thing. I wrote him back and I said, let me introduce you to Josh Stallings. He should review this book. He should blurb this book, not me. And so I got them together. So yeah, yeah, you try to do what you can for people, but you don't have to do it if you don't like the book.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. Other questions?
Oh, go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
I'm just curious, since when you moved over, does Seventh Street own, or do they have the rights to your first?
Yes, they
graphic
do.
novels?
Yes, they do. And that's a very sore subject. They will not give them back. They want a lot of money for the rights. And that's one of the things I didn't like about this man, is that he's greedy. He doesn't put out a good product. And I have one fellow author, the people who are with Seventh Street Books are not happy with their situation with him, because he will not give back any of the rights. Alan Eskins was with the Seventh Street Books, and he's well known now. He sells thousands of copies, maybe millions, I don't know, when he has a book come out. And he asked the man how much he would charge him to get his rights back, and he said $1 million. So he told me he wanted $20,000, and I told my agent that, and she said, absolutely, you will not pay him a dime. He said he should be giving those rights back to you. Most reputable people will give your rights back. So yeah, that was an issue. That was an issue. However, Seventh Street is one of the publishers that doesn't require an agent, and they do have some good authors. So I urge you, if you're looking for some place to send your book, you might think of sending it there. Just be careful about their business practices. That's all. You have to be careful about anybody's business practices. Severn House is very reputable. And for my first 2 books, they bundled them. And that means that both books had to be published before I would see any royalties from the first one. And I didn't even know this was a thing. There are a lot of publishers that do that. But now, after that, I said to my agent, we're not doing that again. And sure enough, they're now doing them individually. But you have to be so careful if you do go with a publisher to make sure your agent, if you have one, does their job and looks at it carefully and lets you know if there's anything odd. But then it's up to you to look at it also. Or get a lawyer, you know. I actually hired a lawyer. More than one of us has hired a lawyer to try to get our rights back. And my lawyer said these contracts are ironclad. You cannot, there's no. I actually had a problem recently in that I tried to get one of my books and they were sold out. So I wrote to the publisher and I said, what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to be publishing my books. And they said, we will publish these books and send them to you right away. So they did. So yeah. Other questions?
I have a question. This is Nan McCann.
Oh, hi, Nan.
Hi. So, I was wondering if you have any advice as far as getting factual information from a real person and here on certain things. So my protagonist is a forensic linguist. The linguistics I have down pat. He's supposedly a consultant for Scotland Yard. I've
Uh-huh.
tried for over a year to get a real person to respond. I was actually in London a week ago and
Lucky
walked.
you.
I know it was great, except I got pickpocketed. So that
Oh,
was,
anyway.
yeah, it was just really quickly. It was a weird thing. I was crossing the street near Scotland Yard, no less. Some guy yells, "Everybody move out of the way, a pickpocket is coming through." And everybody's looking around and everything. Got to the other side, he stands and says, "Well, what are you doing standing around? Your world's about to end." And I thought, the guy's nuts. So I didn't discover it till 4 hours later. and
Oh,
discovered
no. Oh,
no
no.
wallet. So the other guy was the distraction. But anyway, so I did go to Scotland Yard. I was trying to find a real person. They don't even have guard stations. And I walked around the whole thing, couldn't find anyone, but I've tried over a year to just get certain factual information, just so I know the routines and how it's done and the layout. So I fudged it completely. And I can say, I know if it ever gets published, I can say that it is, yeah, this is a work of fiction, and I've taken license with certain things. But do you mentioned police procedurals and feeling really confident in that. But when you're looking for someone to verify something, do you have any advice on how to get a real person to respond?
Get lucky.
And that's what I'm missing.
I was on a bus with a bunch of people who were going to, I don't know, we were back east and doing some kind of tour of some kind. And for some reason we were stopped for a long time, and I just started talking to the guy next to me. And I had this idea in my mind about this book that just came out. But I had the idea that this woman was going to be kicked out of FBI training. So I asked the guy, "What do you do?" He said, "Oh, well, I'm working right now. I'm working for the CIA. I'm on loan from the FBI." I said, "Oh, you're the man I need to talk to." So I asked him.
My best friend.
Right. Well, exactly. So, and he said, yes, she would definitely be kicked out for this. So at any rate, luck aside, which luck plays a lot of, I had absolutely no trouble when I was looking. I wanted to ask police officers about various things. I was at a Sisters in Crime meeting in Austin one time, and there was a man who was a detective from, I think it was it Georgetown or one of the towns around Georgetown, and it was a town of 55,000 people at the time. And he had been a detective for 25 years. So I asked him some questions and he was happy to answer. Have you written to people or have you looked it up on the internet? Because I find the internet is really useful, but sometimes you can go down a rabbit hole and it takes a while to find out the information you're looking for.
I have tried on the internet. I've read everything I can. I've even bought books about the Scotland Yard, but they're mostly either way in the past, and
Yeah.
mine's set 2017. I
Yeah.
have corresponded with their contact liaison, who is yet to respond, and so I'm not sure what
Here's
to
who I
do.
want you to talk to. I want you to talk to Deborah Crombie. Write her an
Oh.
email. Write to Deborah Crombie. She knows all kinds of things about things that go on there, and she may be able to steer you in the direction of somebody.
Terry, thanks. I am in contact with Debs and
Good, good.
know her, and yeah, and she was great. And she said that hers is from the past and from her husband, prior husband, and all that. But thank you so much.
Well, if that
Me.
doesn't work, find somebody else who has a Scott, look at some books.
Yeah.
set around Scotland Yard and ask them,
Right.
do you have any contacts that might be able to help me with this?
That's a
Because
great idea.
somebody's going to be able to tell you that.
Somebody will reply.
The other thing that somebody, I'm interested in historical novels as well. And I went to a couple of panels about that, and they said that a resource that's absolutely invaluable is newspapers. So you could think about looking through newspaper accounts about, you know, to me, forensic linguist, that is a very esoteric subject. So, yeah, yeah, that could help you. I mean, I actually keep clippings that I find that I just think, you know, I don't really have anything to do with this, but it's interesting. And now I have all these clippings about diving and about old shipwrecks and things that I have kept over the years, and I have no idea why I kept them. And now I have a whole volume.
And now you do.
Yeah, now I know why. So yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the
Great.
two things I would suggest that might be helpful. But it sounds fascinating, forensic linguist. You know, the other
Oh,
thing you might, no, I don't know whether that would work. I was thinking you might find someone who's a translator who might, but I don't know that that means anything. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm willing to try anything, and thank you so much for all the suggestions. I'll try everything. Thank you.
how about other people? Any questions?
I have a question. Do you have any thoughts about book length? It seems to me that a lot of crime fiction, if we dial back a couple of decades, would be 250 to 300 pages. But now sometimes you'll see books that will run 4, 5, or even 600 pages. And do you have any comments about that, or any
I
thoughts?
do have comments about that. Most publishers do not want books more than 100,000 words. How that translates to pages, I'm not sure. Sometimes you'll read a book that's 500 pages and the print's bigger, you know, and sometimes you're reading something that's 300 pages. So you can't go by pages. It's the number of words. I was telling you that earlier that I have this woman that just wrote this really amazing book and just got it published. She's first time published writer. When she turned her book into the publisher, it was 140,000 words, which is impossible. And they said, no, we want it between, I don't know, maybe 85 and 95,000. So yeah, that's about the length. Now you do get outliers. I just read something called The Yosing Affair by Janet Oakley. And one of the best books I've read in a long time. It's a historical mystery about World War II in Norway, about the Norwegian resistance, which I knew nothing about. And she said that what she likes to do is she likes to find things that are underrepresented in literature and write about that. This was a phenomenal book, but it was 530 pages, and I was having to read it for a panel, and it was the last book, and I said, I will never be able to finish this book. But I finished it because it was so good that I could not stop reading. I just whizzed through it. So yeah, I'll tell you what you get more of is in science fiction, you get really long books, and I have no idea why that is. If you read, I mean, I read science fiction, so I know this, that you read these 800-page books and they're just fabulous, but you're not going to find mystery publishers that will do this. They'll say, make it 2 books. So anyway, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Any more questions? I like your questions.
I want to ask you about, you were talking about your writers groups, and I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how how often do you meet? How do you structure it? Like, how often does each person get to share? Just kind of the nitty gritty of how you set it up.
One of them meets once a month, and because one of the women is one of them is traveling. One of them is a nonfiction writer, one of the members, and he's traveling on a book tour. One of them is is a nomad, so she's always doing, she's always who knows where. So we do it by, I will give them my whole book when it's finished. And I actually credit them with this latest book, the latest Samuel Craddock book, which will come out in October. This has never happened to me before. They gave me their notes on the books. I really took it to heart. I reshaped the book depending on what they had told me, really worked hard on it, gave it to my publisher, and my editor said, I've never had to say this to anyone. I have no notes for you. This book is fine. the way it
Oh,
is."
wow.
I was just flabbergasted. And that was a nice thing, but I credit my writers group with that because they're very serious readers. You have, if you join a writers group, you have to be sure that they are right for you because this man who's a nonfiction writer, when he joined us, said, well, he's never going to be somebody who'll read my book. And he'll probably say, oh, they're fine. Oh, on the contrary, he's really a careful reader. So, people of all kinds the other one meets once a week. Theoretically, we don't always meet once a week, but we meet on Friday mornings from 10 to noon. And yeah, sometimes no one has anything, so we don't meet. But
Okay.
yeah.
I was just curious how you structured it. That's good to know.
Well, that one is structured so that people turn in up to 20 pages and they read them aloud. So that in the meeting, they read them aloud and then we talk about the 20 pages or 10 pages. And sometimes it's just 5 pages. And sometimes it's just somebody wants to know an idea. Sometimes somebody wants to just go over a synopsis, which is the hardest part about writing. I was just, how can you write an 80,000 word book? And yet the hardest part is writing the synopsis. I actually was asked to do a synopsis of the second book in my Jesse Madison series, the new one. I've never written a synopsis before to get a contract. So I just made up some stuff. I have no idea. Apparently, they don't care whether or not you stick to the synopsis. That's so weird to me. Why do they? Publishers, they don't care what the synopsis is. They just want to know whether you can write one. I mean, what is that?
Are you a pantser or instead of a plotter? Is that
Totally pantser. Totally.
right.
Yeah. Although I had a conversation with someone at the last conference I was at, and she said she has a theory that people who say they are pantsers actually have an outline in their heads. I don't. I get to the end of a Samuel Craddock book and I have no idea who did it. I have no idea.
Really?
I have no idea what happened. I'm completely baffled as everyone else. I say, Terry, this is the moment of truth. Who did this?
Wow.
And the crazy thing is I'll go back through, and honestly, this happens every time. I will go back to the first chapter and I'll say, oh, wait a minute. And I've already planted the idea there. That to me is the magic of writing.
That's
It's
so cool.
absolutely magic. It floors me every time I think, how could I go through this whole book and not know that? But I don't. And only once did I have to kind of go back and mess a few things with the timeline in order to get it right. But usually it's just right there. It's just
That is so cool.
it
Yeah,
is
Helen.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, one question. Terry,
Yeah.
you said in your weekly meeting that you read aloud, that everybody reads their set. What does that do? What is that impact does that have on you when you hear your?
You can hear, I mean, people afterwards will tell you stuff and you already know it. I mean, a lot of the stuff you already know because you've heard it out loud. And I actually think that it's probably be a good idea to read your work out loud as you're writing it. But I just never have. But when you're reading out loud, you'll say, oh, that's a stupid sentence. Why did I write that? Why did I, yeah. So it helps to read aloud. Yeah. And it helps everyone else to hear it too. It's also audiobooks are very popular right now. I don't have my books out on audio, but they're very popular. So it's nice to be able to hear so that if you do an audio book, you know, you can hear what it's going to sound like to people.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Other questions? Gosh, you guys have good questions. You've been a great audience. Is there anything else I have
Oh,
to?
I think Noreen has a question.
Well, it's not a question. I was gonna tell you, you mentioned somebody who listens to theirs being read to them by the computer.
Uh-huh.
That's what I do with my manuscripts in Microsoft Word. It's got a function in under review.
Oh,
and
okay. Okay, good. He has a program and I don't remember what it is, but yeah.
Yeah, Microsoft Word has a read aloud function in the newer versions of the software, so you can just push read aloud and it will read your manuscript to you.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
great. Then I do that so I can hear missing commas
Yeah.
and wrong words and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I used to have to print out my books because I really felt like I caught things when I read it on the printed page that I don't catch on the computer. But somewhere along the line, I stopped doing that, and I don't remember why. I just stopped. You know, I feel like I'm more comfortable with the computer now than I was when, you know, I'm old. I've been doing this a long time, so Kathy, don't grin. So, well, look, that's about all I have to say, and I hope that this was helpful and that you got some things. And please write to me if you have anything else. I'm at terryshames@gmail.com. Happy to answer questions. Happy to help you with whatever you need. Because I don't know about you, but it's always over, and then I think, "Oh, I'm so stupid. Why didn't I ask this?" So,
Well, Terry, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with us today. It was really an interesting discussion and very valuable. And
good.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. Very nice to see everybody.
I can't wait to read your newest book.
Oh,
Yeah.
Me too. Okay, bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Take care.
Have a
See
great
you.
day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.